Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of Valpo Football Weekly, brought to you by Lakeshore Bone and Joint Institute. Brandon Vickery with you. Glad to be joined by the head coach of the Valpo football program, Landon Fox. We'll look ahead to this week's game, but first, let's look back at this past weekend, and let's maybe start with the Marist long drive at the end of regulation. As you look back at that key drive that tied the game and eventually sent it to overtime, what stands out to you?
Yeah, a couple of things. Number one, our inability to get off the field on third down. That was kind of a consistent theme throughout the game. And so I think a couple of things there. Number one, our players have to perform at a higher level in terms of it was kind of consistency with the plays that they were running, a lot of comebacks. And then number two, that we have to coach it better so that they understand what they're going to get. And then the reality is too, when you play the game of football, there's good plays, there's bad plays, and there's stupid plays. And when you have a personal foul that, quite frankly, would have put them at second and 28, been obviously behind the sticks considerably. And when you have a personal foul, and those kind of plays will get you beat, and that was part of it. Obviously, that's one play doesn't win or lose a game, but the reality is you can't have those plays.
That drive did end. At the very end of it was a high note with the PAT being blocked to keep the game tied and essentially to send it to overtime. Take me through that situation, that play where you need a block and you're able to come up with it.
Yeah, that's one thing that we challenged our players in terms of every point needs to be contested, and through the first couple of games, I'm not sure we were giving the effort that we may need on those extra points. And I thought throughout the game, the guys did a tremendous job in terms of their effort, just competing. And there's a couple of chances that we had the chance to get. If you look at it, this was probably one of the less amount of push that we got throughout the game, but we were able to get our hand up and obviously block the kick.
Great spot of the game was Solomon Davis. Statistically, his best game in a Valpo uniform, best game by a Valpo wide receiver statistically in nearly a decade. What stood out to you about the way he played on Saturday?
Solomon Davis, I mean, he's a good football player, and so you got to give credit to our offensive staff in terms of putting him in position to see the football and obviously make plays for our football team. But the one thing that all receivers, and be it on our team or any team, there's only one football, and there's 5 guys out there, and that play has to find you. So credit to Solomon, and when he did get an opportunity to make plays, he did it. But at times, you got to do a great job in terms of your ability to block, to be the decoy, whatever you need to do to help the football team.
Certainly injuries have been a factor at the running back position. What do you have to do to establish more of a presence on the ground going forward?
Yeah, that's something that, that we've had some injuries at a couple different positions that I quite frankly don't talk about too much, because the reality is it's next man up. Nobody cares that you have injuries because other teams have injuries as well. But does it hurt to a certain degree in terms of some positions? Sure. And so I think the one thing that we have to do a better job of is making sure up front that we're getting push on the line at the line of scrimmage. And then, Brandon, the one thing that was a little disappointing, you go back and you watch the game, is we did miss a couple cuts that would have created some bigger runs for us. And so we have to be consistent up front and who we're blocking and getting a push at the line of scrimmage. And then when we do, we got to make sure that our aiming points are proper in the run game.
It's never easy to lose a game that comes down to the wire, and I think certainly tough emotionally for a team to do it 2 games in a row. What's your message right now? How do you address the team in terms of handling the adversity of this moment?
Yeah, so I think I said it to the team after the game, and I feel no different. That when we play football games, the reality is it's going to be a 3-point, 7-point, 10-point game, and so you have to have that mindset going into the game. And then I know you had a statistical number since I've been here, and I don't know it right off the top of my head, but majority of our games we've been here as a staff have been that way. And so the reality is you have to prepare for 60 minutes, and you have to be consistent in your play. The biggest compliment you can give as a player is consistency. If he's a average player, then be average. If he's a really good player, then be really good. And so we know exactly what we're going to get on Saturday.
I always ask you about the opponent, and I think especially so this week with it being a first-time opponent that maybe a lot of Valpo fans are not familiar with. What can you tell us about Southwest Minnesota State?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's a different in terms of going from Marist, where I've had the opportunity to compete against those guys for probably 12 years with their same coaching staff. to go against a team that obviously is kind of unknown to us. But you know, it would be a great opportunity for us to get out there. And I think the key is it's more about us than it is about them. And I know that may be cliche, but we have to do what we need to do offensively, defensively, and special teams. But you know, from their end, they're going to give you a lot of shifts, motions, and try to confuse you defensively. And they have a very good running back, and so that will present some issues. And then from a defensive perspective, similar to last week, with a little bit different scheme, they're a 3-man front, but it's not as much, has not been as much blitzing. So we'll have to understand what they're trying to get done and who we need to block in order to be successful.
There he is, the head coach of the Valpo football program, Landon Fox. Another home game this week, a 1 p.m. start at Brown Field. For tickets, valpoathletics.com/tickets. And we hope to see you out at Brown Field on Saturday. We'll talk to you again next week on Valpo Football Weekly, brought to you by Lakeshore Bone and Joint Institute.